Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Custard's presentation about replacing your phone system with Microsoft Teams. It's quite topical at the moment because we've got so many people working from home or elsewhere, not being in the office. So what we thought we'd do is introduce you to the Microsoft Teams phone system. I would ask you to all please put your microphones on mute for the time being, and feel free to ask questions throughout and we'll answer them, or at the end we'll take a questions and answers session with Joe. I'm going to hand over to our technical expert now, Joe Smiley. He'll run you through the presentation.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today. So I'm just going to take you through a presentation obviously on Teams specifically and the phone system features within Teams as well. As Michaela says, it's going to be a technical presentation about the different features and different ways of getting everything that you can possibly get out of Microsoft Teams as a phone system. So we'll start the presentation now and just take you through a few slides. So first and foremost, what is Microsoft Teams? So Teams is a communication hub or a communication platform which is basically designed to establish productive teamwork, part of the Office 365 suite and Office 365 platform. The suite and Teams specifically has communication tools to allow users to chat and call between internal people, also external guests as well, create meetings and essentially collaborate on different topics. There's a few different key features on the screen at the moment, but we're going to go through each of those in a little bit more detail over the next few slides. So specifically regards the chats, calls and meetings functions within Teams. Essentially Teams has the functionality to be able to create channels, chat channels within the software, within the program. That can either be a group channel where you may want to create a group for a particular sale or a particular project to discuss internally between departments or within an entire department. So a good example there is that you might be discussing a quote for a client, for example. You may need a couple of members of a project team involved in that channel. You may need the sales team and account managers involved in that channel. If you add all those people to the channel, you can share conversations, files, and essentially collaborate and get a productive conversation going about that particular topic. Equally, if you don't need multiple people involved in the conversation, you can have private chats or one-to-one chats or smaller group conversations. So you may just need to talk to a particular, maybe an account manager about a client account or a topic regards a quote. For example, you would potentially, if that only involved yourself and one other person, be able to just chat with that person directly and not involve everyone else, so they're getting bombarded with notifications. So you've got direct access and direct communication with that person. Equally, you can call that person and do a video meeting, one-to-one video meeting, or a group video meeting. Video meetings can be scheduled as well, a bit like what we're doing today. And essentially, you can have HD video where everyone can see each other, communicate with each other and talk to each other and effectively collaborate on a topic or a conversation that the meeting's been created for. Now, one of the extra features that there is in Teams is the dial-in audio conferencing option. Now, the dial-in audio conferencing option can be part of existing licenses that you want to take out, so essentially included in a license package that Microsoft offer, or equally you could simply just take out that one license if you wanted to, if you just wanted that feature. So what is it? Essentially it's a feature of Teams that allows people that don't have the Teams application or have no means to get hold of the Teams application to join in via either a landline phone, a mobile number, and hear the people within the conversation and talk to them just over a traditional normal phone. That essentially, when the meeting gets sent out, the invitation gets sent out, a number to call will be presented as part of that. The individual can dial that number, enter the access code that will be given as part of the invitation, and then join the meeting along with everybody else. They just wouldn't be able to see video. So that's an option. It's incredibly rare that you wouldn't be able to join a Teams meeting in the way that we are today, and that allows you to see video, where you need that dial-in audio conferencing number, simply because Teams is so accessible now. Essentially, you can have it on almost any device. That means that you can have it on an Android phone, an iOS, Apple device, whether that be an iPhone or an iPad, and almost any other device. MacBooks, you can have it on Windows laptops, Windows PCs. Now, most of those platforms have dedicated applications for them. Certainly Android phones do, Apple devices do, MacBooks and Mac devices do, as well as Windows devices. Now, you might have a Chromebook or some device that doesn't have that operating system or doesn't have a dedicated app. Teams is available over a mobile desktop browser, so or any sort of browser that you might have. So effectively, you can join on from any internet connected device, providing it has a browser available. So that might be Chrome, Internet Explorer, or any such software, basically. Now, we can also give users dedicated phone numbers, so very much a DDI essentially. So that essentially means that you could give the dedicated phone number out to a client, and that would allow the client to dial that person directly and get hold of them very quickly. So essentially, the call, if they dial that number, the call will come in on Teams. They would answer it just like a normal phone call, pick up a headset or talk to them through their speakers on their laptop or PC, and be able to get in touch with that person directly. So some very, very neat and powerful tools and features within Teams to make collaboration and communication very, very powerful. So another thing that makes 365 Suite in general very powerful is the ability to integrate between each of the 365 apps within the suite, as well as other external applications, but we'll come onto that in a second. Effectively, the Office 365 suite, so that includes SharePoint, Word, Excel, OneNote, Power BI, Planner, Microsoft Bookings, etc. The list goes on. They're all designed to be seamlessly integrated without any configuration. So out of the box, they are integrated. What we mean by that is effectively a good example of that with Teams would be that any contacts within Outlook that you may or may not have would be accessible via Teams. So you could go into the Teams application, you can search for a particular user's name, whether that person is internal or external to the business. They most likely would have an email address or most likely a contact number associated in their contact within Outlook. Teams can just dial that directly and talk to them directly using that contact information. So what that means is you don't have to have two lots of contact lists, one in Outlook, one in Teams, and then the other applications. It all syncs seamlessly between each of the others, meaning you only have to add it in one place and it's available throughout the suite to all the other applications. So it really does minimize the amount of work people need to do by adding contacts and other things similar to that as well, effectively, where you find yourself potentially doing repetitive tasks and adding the same information in various places. That's very much minimized, if not eradicated, with the 365 suite. So a few of the features that really help towards that are the conversations that you can have and the file sharing that you can do within the Teams workspaces. So we've already touched on the channels that you can create within Teams and the one-to-one chats. You can share files, view and go back to conversations, the history of conversations within Teams. Essentially any messages as well, and any sharing within Teams is instant as well, so there's no delay with the other person receiving it. It's the second you've sent that message or sent that file, it's instantly available and can be seen on that other person's machine or Teams application, and they will be notified to that. A few other features within within the 365 suite as well is the ability to co-author or collaborate on different documents. So traditionally, especially with on-site servers, on-premise servers, if you were trying to work on a Excel spreadsheet as an example, that would effectively only allow the first person that opened that document to be able to edit the document. If any subsequent users wanted to open it and start working on it, they wouldn't be able to. It would open as read-only, and they wouldn't be able to access that file until the first person had saved and closed it. They wouldn't actually know as well who had that file open necessarily, so it's a bit of a minefield as to who had it open, whether they were actually working on it or just accidentally left it open. So what 365 does, which is a bit of a first really in the IT world, and really overcomes quite a big problem really, is that you can have multiple people working on the same document at the same time, and more specifically, those people are able to essentially see the changes in live real time effectively. So they are able to see the changes that the first user is entering as they enter it on their screen, and vice versa, that for the other people are also able to see everything else that everyone's doing on that document as well. So a couple of other powerful tools within the 365 app, or certainly one of the most powerful tools within the 365 Office suite, is the Power BI tool. Now, Power BI is a reporting function or a reporting system that allows you to create dashboards and reports about any data that you can think of, essentially. So you may want to know how many chats that somebody, or how many conversations somebody's been involved in a given time frame within Teams. Power BI can report on that. It's a way and means of essentially extracting information from the suite of applications, but not only the suite of applications that Microsoft make, it can do external applications that are not Microsoft applications as well. And essentially report on financial data, productivity of staff, workflows, etc. Anything that you can think of, you can pull data, build it into charts, build it into graphs. So essentially, it's a very, very powerful tool to really make every single detail within the business visible, and make sure nothing goes unnoticed, essentially, and make decisions based on that data. So just expanding a little bit on the integrations, there are integrations or extensions specifically, as Microsoft call it, that allow other external tools or external programs and systems to be able to plug into Office 365 and Microsoft Teams very specifically. So one of the tools that we always use, an example is Sage, because a lot of people use Sage in their business, or have done at some point. Sage obviously is an accounting program, and essentially you could use the Sage integration to send a notification into a Teams channel that effectively means that you would be able to notify your accounts department, let's say, when a payment has been made by a client, for example. So essentially, if your accounts team only check the bank once a day, the notifications could go into the Teams channel and notify them when a payment's been made. That might be a trigger to go and check a bank and then get a job going, for example, based on a payment coming in. So a very powerful tool there. There's various other things that you can do outside notifications as well. So another example of what you could do is you could use an integration. Let's use the Wrike integration on the screen there as an example. Wrike is a project management tool. Essentially, project management traditionally includes Gantt charts, and essentially Wrike is a cloud-based project management system. Now you'd have to go to a web browser, load Wrike up, log in, and load the Gantt charts that you want, or the projects that you want to view, to see the current completion state or the current state of play of a particular project, any issues, etc. With the Wrike integration as another example, that essentially means that you could integrate Wrike with Teams. You would have the ability to view the Gantt charts and view the projects within the Teams app. Now, what that means is that a lot of the applications that you might use, or that most businesses are using, could actually integrate to Teams in a way that means that you would only really need to use the Teams application to use all the tools within your business. Essentially, you come in the morning, you load up the Teams application, and you would have access to all your other systems, essentially, or your other services within the Teams application. It's not fully there yet in terms of being the only application that you need on your PC, but that is really the way that Teams is going. There will be a point in time where Teams is the only application that you need to install on your PC to be able to do your day-to-day job role. You would come in the morning, load Teams up, and work from the Teams application, and be able to do everything that you currently do now. That is the way that the system is heading, so an incredibly powerful tool. There's a lot of integrations. There's actually 150 plus integrations on the system, and that essentially means that you are able to integrate with almost any application that you want. If there's not an application there that already integrates with the system, there might be what we call a middleman integration that allows you to plug in a tool that currently does not integrate with Teams via another integration, and that would allow the two to seamlessly work together. So there are various ways and means to get almost everything into Teams and integrate with Teams. Now, one of the things that people obviously are talking about a lot more at the moment than they have been certainly in recent years is security across all platforms. So security is a big talking point and has been for a little while now, regards how businesses, especially with the cloud movement, are able to really make sure their data and systems are as secure as can be. Now, Microsoft are really leading the security of cloud-based solutions, more so than most other leading cloud providers. Microsoft have a very unique customizability system, essentially, where you can tailor licenses, settings, features exactly how you want to almost achieve any level of security. So that means that the Microsoft platform, the 365 platform, which obviously includes Teams and the phone system within Teams, is compliant to all leading compliance requirements. That might be GDPR, it may well be that you're an ISO accredited company, and also it might be that your insurance, maybe cyber insurance or your business insurance, requires you to prove your compliance to a certain level. Now, Microsoft will meet all leading compliance requirements, and it does that by various methods. Now, there's the obvious multi-factor authentication system that most platforms, not just cloud platforms now, are getting into and allowing users to really implement. Essentially, for anyone who doesn't know what multi-factor authentication is, essentially that's an additional level of authentication up and above the username and password that you would normally enter. So what would happen if you enabled that for a user is the user would enter their username, enter their password, and then they would be sent a code to a device, whether that be a text message to a mobile phone, it might be an email to another email address, or it could be that you've got an app on your mobile phone and it sends a notification to that app which you can approve. So that really means that if an attacker tries to guess your password, which nowadays is getting far easier with the progression of technology, speed of PCs, etc., they would have to also have physical access to one of your devices as well. So it really secures a user like a password can never do. So other features which are very powerful within the suite is the mobile device management, MDM, mobile application management, which is MAM, which is all built into the Microsoft Intune platform. Microsoft Intune is part of the Azure suite of applications, and is a full suite or a full system that can manage all applications within your business and all devices within your business. Now, what you might want to do is, as an example, you may not want people to use their personal phones for business use. You might not want them to have the corporate emails on there. Microsoft Intune will essentially create policies, or allow you to create policies, where you could say that we only want corporate owned devices or specific devices to be able to configure the corporate emails on them. So it allows you to control which devices have those emails on there. Equally, it can also restrict what requirements are needed to essentially allow a device to connect to Office 365, for example. So you may want to stop Apple devices connecting to emails, as another example, if they're not on the latest version, which as we speak at the moment, I believe is iOS 13. So if they're running iOS 12 as an example, it would deny them access automatically until they've upgraded. There's also various other features within the Azure platform, such as conditional access. Now, conditional access is something that you can configure to really restrict access from different locations or based on different criteria, and stop people connecting in situations that you don't want them to. A good example of that would be that, and how we've got our system configured as an example, is that you might not want users to connect outside of the UK. So that might simply be that you've not got any business operations outside of the UK, in which case you can deny access to all locations except for the UK. So if someone from Russia or the US at that point decided to try and connect to your system, guess the password of a user, they wouldn't be able to, because it's literally not going to let them access the system from those locations. Yeah, at the point where you are allowing access to the UK, that's why multi-factor authentication comes in. You really need multi-factor authentication enabled for those users, but essentially reducing the ability for someone to attack your users, your systems, get in to your systems without authorization. Microsoft is one of the leading cloud providers, certainly, that are able to really allow you to do that to an incredibly granular level as well. So moving on a little bit, and more specifically about what this presentation is kind of about, is the phone system within Office 365. Now, essentially, the phone system within Office 365 is based on the Microsoft Teams software or platform. So the Teams software can be leveraged to completely replace your current phone system. Now, it may be that you've got a hosted phone system. You might pay a company to host your phone system, meaning you might only have some software that does your phones. You may only have a few desk phones that connect via the internet to a central location and receive phone calls, make phone calls that way. Alternatively, potentially you might have what we call a PBX on site, which is a physical phone box or phone system on site, usually in your network cabinet or network rack in your server room, and that effectively allows all the devices to connect in, and that is the clever bit of the system, and effectively kind of manages the phone calls, tells the phone calls where to go, accepts the phone calls, and sends them to the right users to be answered, for example. So the phone system within Teams or the 365 system is able to completely replace all of that and be your only phone system and communication platform for the business. It's essentially got all the functions and more of all traditional or existing phone systems that are on the market. So we'll go through a few of the features of the phone system at the moment. So traditionally, every phone system tends to have a IVR. Now, an IVR is the option list, essentially, when you call into a particular number. So it might be that you call in and you press option 1 for sales, press option 2 for account management, and things like that. Now, in Teams or in the Office 365 phone system, that is called auto attendance. It's exactly the same thing, but far, far, far more powerful. The auto attendance in Teams allows you to really configure the system to a granular level yet again, and that is essentially because it's allowing you to nest, as we say, auto attendance as one example. So it might be that you want multiple levels of options. For example, you might want to press option 1 to go to sales, and then under sales you might have various sales departments or sections, and you can have another IVR under that. The other features in the auto attendant is voice recognition. So you can have the ability to, rather than press an option, for example, you can actually just read out the option. You can get the user to say sales, for example, when they're calling in. So an incredibly powerful system that, to be honest, is only getting better day by day. One other feature that's unique to really unique to some phone systems, such as Teams. There are other phone systems out there that do the status changes, but not many at all. Teams takes it to another level, really. Essentially, you have various statuses within the Teams platform, and that dictates whether you can or can't receive phone calls. So by default, you've got the available status, you've got a status called busy, and there's various other system statuses. So an example of where they might come into play is if you had a meeting booked in between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. The system, Teams, will know exactly when you're going into that meeting and know that you're going into that meeting at 2 p.m. It'll change your status to in a meeting and effectively enable do not disturb on your system. So if you are in a call queue for sales, for example, but you're in a meeting between 2 and 3 p.m., you can the system will automatically change your status to not receive phone calls. Now, if you don't want that to happen, you don't have to. It can be turned off per call queue or user, and it's entirely configurable. So whilst that's there, incredibly powerful, and actually removes the potential for human error. Maybe they're on a web conference or webinar like we are, or they might be in a very important meeting with their laptop. Teams may be open on their laptop, and therefore they don't want to be disturbed with phone calls coming in, essentially putting them off track or disturbing the flow of that meeting. So the status changes can be incredibly powerful. Not a lot of people might know, but Teams has actually been around for a long time, just not as Teams. So effectively, it was launched somewhere around 2009 as Link. Not a lot of people took it on at that point, and it was a system that was that effectively could do instant messaging as Teams can now, and be a full-blown phone system. It then developed into Skype for Business with the acquisition of Skype. And has been Skype for Business for some time, and then in recent years has been rebranded again to Teams and completely overhauled the system. So Teams has been completely redeveloped using the basis of Link / Skype for Business. So it's not a system that many people think that's brand new. It's got pedigree. It's been tried and tested. So it's not the fact that you wouldn't be putting all your eggs into a brand new system that's not tested, that's not tried, that could have problems. It's been around for a long time, and that should give a lot of people a lot of faith really in the system, that it is a well-established system. One of the other features that we've got as well is previous conversations. So any conversations that you have as an instant messaging system, you can go back to. So that means that if you were talking to a client over Teams, or you were talking to someone internally, instant messaging them, you can go back to that conversation, view what that conversation was about, what got said in it, and pull any or extract any information from that conversation should you need to at a later date. The Teams software has an integrated dial pad. So this essentially allows you to not have a desk phone should you not want one. So a lot of phone systems traditionally, again, have always needed a desk phone. There's not a whole lot of phone systems on the market that allow you to plug a headset in and use software. There are a few on the market, but the ones that you can, the ones that are the big names essentially that a lot of people think of, such as Avaya, etc. It's not something that they have had for a while, or may not currently have at the moment. The software that such phone systems do tend to have isn't that powerful, and tends to be a little bit problematic at times. So people with those tend to opt for desk phones, because they're on such systems, they're tried and tested. They've always been designed to work with desk phones. Teams is designed to work with the software and also works incredibly well with desk phones, and it has dedicated desk phones. So you've got a choice there of using a desk phone like a normal traditional phone system has, or you could use the software, plug in a headset, or simply use your speakers in your laptop with your microphone and use the software without any desk phones. Now that can significantly reduce the costs of desk phones, which obviously can be quite expensive if you don't actually need a desk phone for a user. It also gives you the ability really to rethink and overhaul the way that you use your IT system. So do you really need all this hardware on your desk? Can you get away with or is it better for you to simply have software installed in your PC and use it that way, meaning that you can quite literally work from anywhere? So it is really a new way of thinking. Voicemail transcripts is another feature. Now this is very, very unusual within a system, within a phone system, and that's partly or mostly down to the fact that Microsoft have their AI platform, which is their artificial intelligence platform. They pump a hell of a lot of money into this, and it really is the future of the entire Microsoft business, really, Microsoft 365 suite certainly. Now the AI platform is an automation platform essentially, where it is able to do tasks that a human would normally do, but essentially does it for them. So in this example with voicemail transcripts, if someone was to call in and leave you a voicemail, it would be able to transcript that for you, which means that you would receive a email with the voicemail actually attached as maybe an MP3 audio file, or essentially a WAV file, something along those lines, and then it will transcript that message. It would actually listen to that message itself and write what it said in the body of the email. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but it's very, very close. A lot of the times you can essentially receive that voicemail and not actually have to listen to the voicemail recording itself. You can simply read the email and it tells you exactly what was said in that email, in that recording. So incredibly powerful. So how do you get the phone system part of 365? Now, as kind of out of the box, the Teams phone system isn't enabled essentially. So if you have got the ability to use Teams, which you simply get by having a 365 service license, so that might be the Microsoft 365 Business, Microsoft 365 Standard, or Microsoft 365 Premium, just to name a few licenses, that automatically gives you access to the Teams features, the messaging features, the meetings features. However, to use the phone system features, you need an add-on license. Now, previously, up until recent months, Microsoft have made that quite difficult. However, have completely rethought out the process of doing that. You need the phone system add-on. However, that used to require also a further 2 add-ons to be able to use the full functionality of the Teams phone system. Now, you need to simply have the Microsoft 365 Business Voice license. That includes every single feature that you could possibly need in Teams. There are no other options that you can enable on Teams. It gives you full access to every feature that is available. And it's actually far cheaper now than it used to be. So the licenses that you needed previously, before they overhauled the licensing structure, would have come to quite a lot more than what it does now. If you just enable the one license now, it's one set fee for every user, and it's cheaper than it used to be with the separate licenses. The phone system, as we've already discussed, the phone system license does allow you to transfer calls, receive calls, make outbound calls, and all the normal features that you would expect from a phone system, but many, many more. Phone system users are able to use the phone system, as we've already discussed, on their mobile devices, whether they've got an Android phone, an iPhone, with a headset on their PC or laptop, or they could have a desk phone as well. Now, that really gives you the option to essentially allow users to work almost from anywhere. And the Teams phone system, one of its best selling points, the best thing about it is the fact that you are not restricted to one physical location. Obviously, with this COVID situation at the moment that we're all trying to kind of battle through, essentially that means that such occasions, such issues, you can simply tell your users to pick up the laptop and go home and work from home. All they need is their laptop and internet connection, and they can work with systems such as Teams just from home, exactly the same as what they would have been able to in the office. Additionally, phone system admins can very easily manage different settings and configuration from the admin console. Now, obviously, companies such as ourselves would do all that for you, but if you wanted to just make simple changes such as regular taking on and removal of users, so you might have a user leave and you want to take them out of the call groups, you might want to just tweak the call groups a little bit and the way that calls come through, or you might have a new user starting and you want them to be on the sales line, for example. It's incredibly easy with Teams just via a web browser to do that. And essentially, with traditional systems, you may have had to log on to a server using a very specialist piece of software, need an admin username and password, obviously, to get in, and then quite a lot of knowledge of the system as well to be able to make that change, to make sure that you're not going to break something else. With Teams, you don't tend to get that really. It's very, very easy to log on. As an admin, it's very easy to make those simple changes, and the more complex changes a company like ourselves can do, or we can do everything for you. It just gives you that little bit of an option that if you wanted to make those simple changes yourself or to just view the configuration, it's entirely possible with Teams, whereas with traditional phone systems it mostly wasn't, and it was a case of asking a company like ourselves, how do my phone calls work, how do they get routed, and we'd have to come back to you. So as we've already mentioned, we to be able to get the full suite of features from Teams or the phone system, we've got to add on the phone system license. So the phone system license comes with a calling plan. We basically use our calling plans via a SIP provider and not via Microsoft. Now, there's a very good reason for doing that, because Microsoft do offer calling plans built into Teams. The price is exactly the same to do either a SIP provider to provide your calling plans or for Microsoft to provide your calling plans. However, essentially it's not, Microsoft are not a SIP provider. Now, a SIP provider is essentially the company that would route your phone call. So in the world of landline phones, that would be BT. BT send the phone calls that you receive down the copper wire to your house or to your building, and you pick it up on your traditional analog phone. It's a very similar kind of prospect, or similar theory with SIP providers. However, it's down the internet. So SIP providers receive a call for you, send it to the right place, very simply. Now, SIP providers also hold your numbers, so you might have some 0800 numbers, some geographic numbers. They reside with the SIP provider. And what that means simply is that Microsoft don't hold those numbers. That's really, really powerful, simply because if Microsoft did hold the numbers and the Teams platform went down, which is incredibly unlikely because the amount of data centers, hosting facilities Microsoft have got, and the amount of money that they pump in to redundancy, if they did have a problem like that, it might even be a bug, not just the fact that they go down, and it might affect phone calls being received, which is entirely possible. We would be able to very quickly and easily reroute phone calls to either another landline, another number such as a mobile phone, and get you up and running, receiving phone calls via a different method. Now, touch wood, that's never happened as yet since we've been using the system. However, we have to prepare and plan for such events. Effectively, where as a service provider we feel that Microsoft are, is that if they had such an event where Teams was unavailable for an amount of time, they would have a number of millions of people calling in to ask them to reroute phone calls to mobile numbers. And then when they're back up and running, they'd have another number of phone calls to reroute them back to Teams when it's ready to go again. If you use a SIP provider and don't rely on Microsoft, the SIP provider allows you to do that, or us as a service provider to do that directly without speaking to Microsoft. That allows us quite simply to get you up and running by repointing phone calls to a different location within probably a few minutes, less than 5 minutes. So a very, very good way, robust way of making sure that you've got a contingency plan, a disaster recovery plan, should there be an issue with that cloud service. That's the same with any other phone system. Most other phone systems also do use SIP providers. So if you use a provider, if you use a SIP provider that's a phone system that's hosted or even on premise, and it's a VoIP system, you will use a SIP provider. You can contact that SIP provider to reroute phone systems if your on-site phone system goes down, for example, and the hardware breaks, and you can reroute that. So it essentially gives you that same functionality. It means that if Microsoft, like I say, were down and they were inundated with calls, you wouldn't have to just be put in a queue, quite simply, to have your phones redirected. So hopefully that's given you a nice overview of the system, why the phone system is so powerful, and the advantages of Teams and the Office 365 suite in general, as well as security. However, if you've got any questions, we obviously are more than happy to answer those. There's a number on the screen as well if you, after the meeting, have any questions, as well as the email address for our client care team to be able to contact them. But I'll hand it back over to Michaela now, because I think we're going to try and take some questions from you guys and see what we can answer. If you've got any unknown, if you want us to answer any unknown information, basically.
Thank you, Joe. Hopefully everybody found that really informative by not just going through just the phone system side of Teams, but also explaining a little bit more about the Teams system that you get as a basic. And we've had a couple of questions come through on the live chat throughout the session. So I'll go through those, and if anybody's got any more, please feel free to ask. So Joe, I guess I'm going to fire away at you. One of our customers has asked, what's better about Teams than a normal phone system?
Okay, so as we mentioned in the presentation, essentially Teams is a cloud platform. So it's got two very key features that is better than most traditional phone systems, in that you can use the phone system from anywhere. So whether you be on a train, you could be working from home or abroad on holiday, you can use the phone system exactly like you would do in the office, from any location. You simply need a device to use it on and an internet connection. So that's allowing you to not be tied to a location such as an office. It allows you to cover, for example, more geographic locations, maybe across the UK, without necessarily having to open new branches up. It allows your team to work remotely more effectively. So in the event where we've got the situation with COVID, just as an example, which I'm sure down the years there's going to be various other situations like that where you may be forced to work from home, it allows you to do that essentially. With traditional phone systems, you tend to be in a situation where after 5 years, you need to upgrade that. It might not even be 5 years that you may want to look at upgrading, simply because the market moves so fast that your phone system may seem like it's kind of stuck in the dark ages a little bit in terms of functionality. Teams is ever evolving, so updates come out frequently, new features come out frequently, and that essentially means that you get those updates for free without any changes. It actually means that you will most likely never need to move to another phone system again, but you will still essentially keep getting new features as if you were moving to new phone systems. It obviously at that point cuts your migration costs quite significantly if you tend to look at phone systems every 3 to 5 years. To make sure you're getting the most out of the features that phone systems offer. You may end up paying a few £1,000s in migration fees. You wouldn't need to do that with Teams, and it would save you a lot of money on that in that regard.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Joe. Right, the next question is, do I need a BT line as a backup?
Okay, so BT lines aren't needed directly for Teams, simply because the SIP provider are going to be routing the phone calls to your phone system, which is obviously Teams. So BT lines, traditionally, if you had an on-site phone system, just use that as an example, you would use the BT line either way, whether you've got a VoIP phone system or like an analog phone system, you would use the BT line to get the phone calls to your phone system. It is a good idea if you've got multiple people working from one location to have a backup BT line. So if you had, your users working from an office, your head office maybe, the best situation, the best thing that we recommend you to do in that scenario is to have a leased line in that building with a backup BT line, an FTTC fibre line or a ADSL line. In the event that the lease line goes down, you can use phone calls over the ADSL line or the backup BT line. However, that's not necessarily directly needed. You can still access Teams from any location. So if your lease line went down, you could quite simply ask all your users to go home and work from home, and they would be able to do that regardless of the phone system, the exact same in the office as they would do at home. So whilst we do recommend you to have a backup BT line to make sure you've always got internet connectivity, it is not a direct requirement to be able to use Teams.
I think as well, if you've got any questions about kind of what line do I have at my business, we've got all of that information about your business, so we can certainly help as well. Another question's come through. Do Custard actually use this as their own phone system?
Yes, we do. We have been using this for a number of months. It's working very, very well, and actually was quite convenient that we had migrated to it for obviously the COVID situation. It quite literally allowed us to just at the point where the lockdown was declared, basically ask our users to go home and work from home. The only thing we had to consider really was kind of monitors and basic equipment like that. However, all our users have laptops. And all our users had headsets, so it was simply a case of asking them to take those devices home and just boot up, continue to work from home. There was no reconfiguration, no talking to IT departments, asking for changes to be made. It was very, very seamless and quite nice, quite a nice kind of situation to be in, really, especially in comparison to other businesses that have had quite a significantly different experience of having to transition to working from home, and it been quite a lot more difficult simply because they're tied to a physical location.
Brilliant, thank you. And last but not least, somebody's asked kind of what are the costs. I think, Joe, you did cover some kind of information about this throughout, but what I would say about the costs for the voice system, for the phone system itself from Microsoft, is it's really transparent and really easy to follow. It's simply an additional £12 per user for the phone system. So that's unlimited minutes. A real positive is you don't need to worry about additional billing or anything like that. It's unlimited UK minutes. The good thing is it can obviously help you with expansion. So if you have a couple of new people starting, you know that you just need to add an extra £12 on for that user. So it's really great for operational costs and budgeting. In terms of handsets and headsets, is variable. You can start very, very simply with entry-level headsets, which do everything that you'd need with the phone system, and they start from about £30. They seem to be very popular with the evolving climate and people working from home more, because they can simply plug and go, so plug their headset into their laptop. And they go through to various prices for the headsets and handsets, so kind of going up to ones with more features that go through to about £100 or £150. In terms of conferencing, it may be a little bit away yet from people being in the office to do kind of conferencing all in the same room, but they sit around £300 to £500 for really quite cool gadgets and voice units. We've also got add-ons that you can use for in the office, such as using Microsoft Rooms. Again, that's got some peripherals that we can cost for you. The most important thing I think to take away about the cost is it's really cost effective. For just £12 a user is what you should be thinking at this stage. If you are wanting a quotation or for us to look into some requirements that you may have without any pressure to obviously buy the Teams phone system, just get in contact with us following this discussion. Our marketing department is going to be sending through a survey, so it would be really great if we could get some feedback about how the session has actually gone, and it will have a tick box to just say, I would like Custard to get in touch and look at a quotation for us. And we'll do a full scoping about what you need in terms of lines, what you need in terms of headsets, handsets, and kind of the choices that you have. So it's up to you what you want to go with for each user, and we'll also scope it based on your requirements. So please do feel free to fill in that, and then we will be in touch. But as Joe covered, please email client care, myself, or ring that phone number and we'll happily get in touch with you. But apart from that, that's us today, so we'll call it a wrap as such. Hopefully look forward to getting some inquiries from you, but hopefully that's helped learn a little bit more about Microsoft Teams phone system. Thank you for joining us today. Have a good afternoon.